Right now, you probably think of sleep as sort of a biological pause button.
Right, like you just power down.
Exactly. You get into bed, the screen goes dark, your body powers down, and you literally just wait for morning.
Yeah, that's the common assumption.
But if you look at the latest neuroimaging research from the American Psychological Association, I mean, that pause button idea gets completely shattered.
Completely. It's totally wrong.
Sleep isn't a pause button at all. It's the most intensely active, violent, and necessary construction zone that your brain enters all day.
It really is a massive paradigm shift. I mean, we tend to view sleep as just an absence of wakefulness, like it's just empty time.
Right, just downtime.
Yeah, but neurobiologically, when you strip away those crucial hours of rest, you aren't just making yourself physically tired. You are actively dismantling the physical brain structures that are responsible for keeping your emotions in check.
Wow.
Yeah, your entire emotional architecture just completely degrades.
And that is exactly what we are mapping out for you in today's deep dive. Because, I mean, we have all been there, right? Running on 4 hours of sleep, snapping at a coworker, or just feeling inexplicably overwhelmed by a totally normal Tuesday.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're going to break down the actual mechanics of how sleep deprivation just completely hijacks your brain,
Right.
why it destroys your self-control, and really the underlying biology of a bad mood.
And to make it easy to remember, we're going to use some concepts that might remind you of high school biology class. Because to really grasp why we get so unbelievably cranky and fragile after a bad night's rest, we have to look under the hood at the physical wiring of the brain.
Okay, the physical wiring.
Right. Because the emotional volatility you feel, it isn't a personality flaw. It is a structural communication breakdown between two very specific regions.
Okay, so if we're talking about the tension between raw emotion and logic, I'm assuming we're looking at the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex.
Spot on. Yes.
But how does simply being awake for too long actually sever the physical connection between those two?
Well, let's look at the baseline first. So the amygdala is basically your brain's emotional fire alarm.
Okay.
It's this ancient, deeply embedded structure that is incredibly fast and highly reactive. Its primary job is just to detect threats and initiate a survival response.
Like tiger in the bushes, run away.
Exactly, pure survival. Then, right behind your forehead, you have the prefrontal cortex. This is the evolutionary newcomer.
Shiny new upgrade.
Right. It's the advanced, logical, executive functioning center. And in a well-rested brain, the prefrontal cortex maintains a very strong inhibitory neural pathway to the amygdala.
So it's basically providing rational oversight. Like it's the part of the brain that says, well, hey, I know that loud noise was scary, but it's just a car backfiring, not a predator. Stand down.
Exactly that. It contextualizes our environment. But here's the critical finding from the APA sources. Neuroimaging shows that after just one single night of sleep deprivation,
Just one night?
just one night, that physical inhibitory connection severely degrades. The structural pathway weakens.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and without that top-down, rational oversight, the amygdala reverts to an uninhibited, hyperreactive state. In fact, the brain actually showed a 60% increase in amygdala reactivity.
It's a 60% increase.
60% after just one bad night of sleep.
That is insane. So without the logic center keeping it in check, the brain essentially starts perceiving minor, everyday inconveniences as life-threatening dangers.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a slow elevator or a weird tone in a text message or, your partner loading the dishwasher wrong. Your brain thinks those are literal tigers.
It triggers an almost constant physiological fight or flight response. Your nervous system is flooding your body with cortisol and adrenaline over like a misplaced set of car keys.
Okay, let's use this sort of driver's ed biology analogy here.
Yeah.
Think of your brain like a car. The amygdala is the emotional accelerator, is the gas pedal.
Right.
And the prefrontal cortex is the rational brakes. What sleep deprivation does on a neurological level is it essentially takes a pair of wire cutters and snaps the brake lines.
That is a perfect analogy because you are driving around your office all day, and every time a minor annoyance pops up, your brain is just flooring the gas pedal.
And you have absolutely no mechanical way to slow it down.
None. And your physiological system genuinely doesn't know the difference between a looming project deadline and a physical predator in the woods.
Wow.
Your heart rate spikes, your breathing gets shallow, and you are accelerating into every emotional curve of your day without any stopping power.
But here's the reality for most of you listening. When our brake lines are cut, We don't just pull the car over.
No, we don't.
We try to push through, we grab like an iced coffee, we stare at our monitors, and we try to power through the workday. But if the brakes are structurally offline, how are we even functioning? What is that pushing through actually doing to our prefrontal cortex?
Well, that brings us to the concept of cellular energy and resource depletion. Because self-control, willpower, managing your frustration so you don't yell at a client,
Right.
these are not just abstract personality traits, they are highly resource-intensive cognitive functions. The prefrontal cortex is an absolute energy hog.
It just burns through fuel.
Exactly. To keep that executive function running, your brain requires a tremendous amount of cellular energy, specifically in the form of glucose metabolism.
And obviously sleep is when we restore that metabolic balance.
Yes.
So if you skip the sleep, you start the day with a massive energy deficit.
Right. And because you are pushing through, forcing your brain to operate without the requisite fuel, you experience a really bizarre phenomenon called local sleep.
Local sleep, what does that mean?
So when you are sleep deprived, overall you are awake, your eyes are open, you are walking, you are talking.
Yeah.
But electroencephalogram, or EEG readings, show that small, localized clusters of neurons in your frontal lobe are actually emitting slow, sluggish brain waves.
Wait, slow brain waves. Like the kind you only see when someone is in a deep, restorative slumber.
Precisely. Parts of your executive brain are literally falling asleep while you are standing up.
Oh my God.
They are exhausted, entirely depleted of cellular fuel, and they just shut down to clear out metabolic waste regardless of what you are doing.
That is deeply unsettling, but it explains so much. It's like, okay, back to the biology classroom analogy. It's like that exhausted student sitting in the back row of class.
Yes.
The teacher isn't talking, the student's eyes are open, they might even be nodding along, but nobody's actually home.
They are entirely checked out.
Exactly. You are physically awake, but your self-control and your logic are literally taking a nap in the back row.
And when your executive function is napping like that, you face two immediate behavioral fallouts. The first is severe impulsivity.
Okay, the impulsivity.
Yeah, you lose the crucial split-second cognitive buffer that normally allows you to pause and think before you act. That buffer requires energy to maintain.
And since the energy is gone,
The buffer is gone. That's when you make a snappy, sarcastic comment in a meeting, or you hit send on an aggressive email that you instantly regret. The delay mechanism is just completely broken.
so if the buffer's gone, I'm guessing we're also burning through whatever tiny bit of energy we have left pretty fast. I mean, it feels like staring at a blank email draft for 20 minutes because you physically cannot summon the willpower to type the words.
Right, and that is the second fallout. Total resource depletion. It's exactly like having a smartphone with a chemically degraded battery.
Oh, I hate that. Where it says it's at 80%, but then dies 5 minutes later.
Exactly. You might drink a double espresso and feel like you are at 100% when you leave the house, but your actual capacity for willpower is compromised. The caffeine masks the fatigue, but it doesn't provide cellular energy for the prefrontal cortex.
So by 11 a.m., your battery for patience is just flashing red.
Yep. You physically do not have the metabolic resources to resist cravings, regulate your mood, or stay focused.
Okay, so to recap our waking hours after a bad night
Yeah.
for everyone listening, we've got totally drained batteries, our executive function is sleeping with its eyes open in the back row, and our emotional brake lines have been completely severed.
It's a disaster.
It sounds exhausting just talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Which begs the question, if this is the damage, how does the body naturally attempt to repair this specific emotional wreckage at night?
Yeah.
Because obviously we sleep to recover, but not all sleep is created equal, right?
No, it's not. To understand the repair process, we have to look at the architecture of a night's sleep. The critical phase for emotional regulation and psychological repair is REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep.
Okay, REM sleep.
And the timing of REM is vital. While you get some REM in the first half of the night, it heavily dominates the latter half of your sleep cycle, typically in the hours right before you wake up naturally.
Now, the APA sources explicitly refer to REM sleep as a form of overnight therapy. Now, I know REM is when we do most of our vivid dreaming, but what is mechanically happening in the brain that makes it so therapeutic for our emotions?
Mhm. What makes REM incredibly special is the unique neurochemical environment it creates. During REM, your brain is highly active, sometimes even more active than when you are awake.
Really?
Yes, it is busy pulling up the emotional memories, the frustrations, and the difficult experiences from your day. But here's the magic trick. While it is actively reprocessing all of that emotional data, The brain completely shuts off the release of a neurotransmitter called noradrenaline.
Noradrenaline. Okay, let's ground that physical sensation for everyone listening. Noradrenaline is a major stress chemical, right?
Correct.
It's the chemical that makes your heart pound in your chest when you almost get into a car crash or, when you miss a step on the stairs and your stomach drops. It causes sweaty palms, shallow breathing, pure visceral panic.
Exactly. Now, imagine trying to logically process a traumatic or highly stressful memory while your heart is pounding and your palms are sweating.
You can't.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming.
You can't do it effectively. The physical sensation of panic overwhelms the cognitive processing. But during REM sleep, because noradrenaline is completely shut off, your brain can actively reprocess and file away the stressful memories from the day in an environment entirely devoid of stress chemistry.
Wow. So it strips the emotional sting away from the memory.
Yes.
It literally separates the facts of what happened
Yeah.
from the physical pain of what
It
happened.
allows you to integrate difficult experiences into your broader memory network without the visceral physiological reaction attached to them. You wake up remembering the stressful event, but you don't physically feel the panic anymore.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Yeah.
Because we live in a culture that explicitly glorifies the exact opposite of this.
Oh, absolutely.
I see successful CEOs, influencers, and most internet personalities constantly bragging about their 4 a.m. wake-up routines, rise and grind, right?
The hustle culture.
Yeah. They say getting up before the sun is the secret to success. But wait, if REM sleep heavily dominates the latter half of the night, those early morning hours, aren't these people mathematically cutting off the exact stage of sleep that keeps them emotionally sane?
They absolutely are.
How are they functioning so well? Are they just running on pure stress chemistry?
Yes, they are. And it is entirely unsustainable. Waking up artificially early to an alarm clock disproportionately robs you of REM sleep. The people glorifying this routine are essentially riding a continuous wave of cortisol and adrenaline.
So they're just highly agitated.
Right. They mistake the hyperarousal of a sleep-deprived, panicked brain for high-energy productivity.
Wow.
But over time, because they're constantly failing to evaporate the emotional sting of yesterday's experiences, they become emotionally raw. They become brittle.
Because they're just carrying all that baggage.
Exactly. They leave themselves highly vulnerable to chronic anxiety, burnout, and depressive moods because they're carrying the full physiological weight of every stressful thing that happens to them day after day without ever processing it.
Okay, let's go back to our biology class for a second. Think of REM sleep like you are back in that high school lab, and the assignment is to handle a highly reactive, volatile chemical.
I love this analogy.
What REM does is it essentially turns off the hazard alarms, kicks on the ventilation system, and neutralizes all the toxic fumes. That's the noradrenaline shutting down.
Yes, precisely.
It puts you in a safe, controlled fume hood. It allows your brain to clean up the chemical spills of the day safely. So waking up at 4 a.m. to quote-unquote grind means you are literally skipping the cleanup phase.
You are. You are just leaving toxic chemical spills all over your neural pathways.
And when you leave those spills active, they begin to accumulate and just corrode your baseline mental health.
Which brings us to, honestly, the most dangerous part of this entire process. The vicious biological feedback loop of sleep and emotion. The feedback loop, yes. The APA sources emphasize that the link between sleep and emotion is explicitly bidirectional. They feed on each other.
So the emotional spills prevent the sleep, and the lack of sleep causes more spills.
Precisely. We've just established how sleep deprivation causes heightened emotional reactivity, anxiety, and a baseline state of stress. But it runs exactly in reverse, too.
Right.
Chronic stress and high emotional reactivity cause profound sleep disturbances. When your amygdala is hyperreactive and your body is flooded with cortisol, your nervous system is in a state of hyperarousal.
Which means your brain literally senses danger in the environment. So it intentionally prevents you from falling into deep, vulnerable, restorative sleep.
Because it thinks a tiger is outside the cave.
It's a brutal, inescapable trap. The stress of your day ruins the quality of your sleep, and then that ruined sleep completely diminishes the cognitive tools, the prefrontal brakes, the cellular battery, the overnight therapy that you absolutely need to manage that exact same stress the next morning.
It is a self-perpetuating cycle, and the longer you are trapped in it, the faster and more aggressively the wheel spins. The structural degradation just compounds.
So what does this actually mean for you, the listener? If you are sitting there realizing you are stuck in this cycle, where the stress prevents the sleep and the lack of sleep fuels the stress, how on earth do you outline a step to break out of it?
It's tough.
Because if you're biologically compromised and you physically lack the cellular energy to regulate your behavior, it feels like a catch-22. You can't just decide to be less stressed.
It absolutely feels like a trap, and that's why typical behavioral interventions often fail. The sources point to a very clear fundamental paradigm shift that has to happen before any progress can be made.
Okay, what kind of shift?
You cannot life hack your way out of a severe biological deficit. You cannot out-caffeinate a severed neural pathway, and you cannot out-schedule a drained prefrontal cortex. Breaking this cycle requires completely recategorizing what sleep hygiene means in your own mind.
What does that recategorization look like in practice, though? Because I think a lot of us view sleep as something we simply fit in around our actual lives.
Exactly. Many of us implicitly treat sleep as a luxury. We treat it like a reward we get only after all our actual work is done. After the inbox is at zero, after the kids are asleep and the house is clean.
Or we view it like a spa day, like something we treat ourselves to on the weekend to catch up.
Yes, and that is fundamentally flawed. The necessary shift is recognizing that sleep is the non-negotiable, fundamental baseline for your brain's basic structural stability. It is the prerequisite for functioning, not the reward for functioning.
It's like putting on armor before you walk onto a battlefield. You wouldn't go to a war zone and say, well, if I survive the day, I'll reward myself by putting on my Kevlar vest tonight.
That's insane.
It is. But that is exactly what we do with our emotional resilience. We walk into high-stress jobs, difficult relationships, and complex daily lives completely exposed, hoping we can just grit our teeth and survive until we earn our rest.
That's a perfect way to look at it. You have to prioritize the time for that overnight biolab cleanup before you attempt to manage the stress of your waking life.
Before.
Right. If you don't secure the baseline metabolic energy and the structural integrity of your prefrontal cortex first, all your other stress management tools, meditation, time blocking, deep breathing, are essentially useless.
Because the biological hardware required to execute them is just offline.
Exactly. The hardware is broken.
So, to bring this all together for you listening, let's quickly recap what's actually happening in your head so you can visualize it the next time you think about cutting your sleep short.
A good idea.
Remember your brain's biology lab. When you skimp on rest, you are taking a pair of wire cutters and snapping the brake lines from your rational prefrontal cortex to your emotional amygdala. You are forcing your brain to floor the emotional gas pedal every time you encounter a minor inconvenience.
And you are also completely draining your cellular battery, forcing your brain into a state of local sleep. You leave your executive function acting like that exhausted student napping with their eyes open in the back row, totally incapable of exercising willpower, patience, or restraint because the glucose metabolism is just shot.
And crucially, if you fall for the hustle culture trap and cut your sleep short in the early morning, you are skipping the hazard-free overnight therapy of REM sleep.
You're skipping the cleanup.
Exactly. You are bypassing the one time your brain turns off the noradrenaline to process your trauma safely. You are leaving toxic chemical spills all over your neural pathways instead of letting your brain safely neutralize yesterday's stress.
It's so damaging.
Sleep is not a pause button. It is the most active, vital maintenance your brain will do all day.
Which leaves us with a rather profound question to consider, especially when we zoom out from individual biology to look at the broader culture.
Yeah, let's talk about the macro level.
The APA data clearly shows us that just a single night of sleep deprivation causes a 60% spike in emotional reactivity. It physically severs our logic centers from our emotional centers and turns us into impulsive, hyper-reactive, easily threatened versions of ourselves.
Wow. That really puts things into perspective. I mean, if one night does that much structural damage to our emotional regulation, what is a society that normalizes and even glorifies chronic systemic sleep deprivation look like on a macro level?
It's pretty terrifying to think about.
Are the collective conflicts we see every day, the incredibly short tempers on the highway, the toxic comments sections online, the sheer overwhelming volume of modern anxiety, are we simply looking at the symptoms of a culture that has collectively cut its own brake lines?
It certainly seems that way.
Are we just a society desperately in need of a good night in the biology lab trying to run on empty battery? It really makes you reconsider hitting play on that next video when you should be letting your brain do the heavy lifting of keeping you sane. Think about your own brake lines tonight.